That was Honey, with our new Blue Peter guide dog puppy. The puppy was chosen for us last Thursday from a litter of 10 yellow Labrador puppies. And if you weren't watching last Thursday's programme, then we'll tell you exactly why we're having a new Blue Peter guide dog.
It's because 3 years ago, when you sent in all those milk bottle tops, we had enough to buy 2.5 guide dogs. And after we bought Honey, we found we had a lot of money left over.
Honey was so successful that we decided we ought to become puppy walkers again and have a new puppy.
This means we'll be looking after the new puppy for a year, and when we've finished with her, she'll be ready to go to her training school.
Well, because our puppy is so small, and she's had to go back to her mother for a few days, but she'll be back in the studio with us a week on Thursday. And by then, we hope that you will have chosen a name for her.
Well, the name has to be an easy one that she'll remember, nothing complicated like Clementina or Cleopatra. And don't forget to send in your suggestions for the name as soon as possible.
By Thursday, if possible, and then we'll have time to sort them out in time for the following Thursday's programme. Now, the address to send your suggestions to is this one: Blue Peter Guide Dog, BBC Television Centre, London W12. I'll repeat that for you. Blue Peter Guide Dog, BBC Television Centre, London W12.
We've got some more babies in the studio today, and they're younger than our puppy. They're 3 weeks old. They're baby lambs, and they're very, very greedy indeed. Trying to get at the bottom.
You may have seen... Yes, there is one here. There you are, pal.
I've got
oh,
one
you've
here.
got one there. Well, let's
Yeah.
see if we can persuade the lambs to come round. Whoops.
Come on.
Well, you may have seen lambs like this out in the country. No, I'll take this one on the outside.
Okay, and you take that one.
Yes. If you can pass me the other bottle, there's another one down there. This one here doesn't seem to want to use it. Here, hey.
Isn't it
Come back.
No, he's going.
Well, these lambs are rather special because they are orphan lambs. Come on. And they have to be bottle fed. This one doesn't particularly want to be bottle fed. They live on Mr. Shepherd's farm near Godson. Come on, can't I coax you? Can't I tempt you? It's lovely warm milk. It's usually Mrs. Shepherd who has the terrible job of feeding them in the farmhouse kitchen where they live. Now then, they are going to need to be bottle fed 3 times a day for the next 5 or 6 weeks, which is quite a long time.
So it's going to mean that Mrs. Shepherd's got quite a lot of hard work for the next few weeks. I never knew that their tails really did wag like that, Peter. Look at them.
They do, don't they?
Flat,
They get
aren't
rather excited with it. Come
Yeah,
on,
they are, having a
come on.
marvellous time.
Happy to mine. At least it's staying here. It's not sort of rushing off. You're
They're
enjoying that,
lovely,
aren't you? You want this one as well?
Well, while we are feeding these lambs, John has been getting ready for some very strenuous exercise.
Well, if you're a football fanatic like me, you've probably dreamt at one time or another of dribbling down the field, making that final pass that scored the winning goal. But today, right here in the Blue Peter studio, we've got one of those rare players who can do just that, and it's Charlie Cook, of the member of the Scottish team and the Chelsea Football Club. Hello, Charlie, and welcome. Now, Charlie, I was very sorry to hear you got knocked out of the cup.
Not half as sorry as I was, I can assure you.
Well, Charlie, your dribbling and ball control is getting a bit of a legend, actually. Could you demonstrate some of this fantastic control that you have?
We can have a try, John.
Right, so. Now, you started training a long time ago, didn't you, Charlie? Practicing this.
Well, it's a schoolboy habit.
And
Developed over the years.
And in fact, the great thing with this sort of control and practice is that you can practice by yourself. You don't have to have a team around you.
Well, it can be done any time, any place. Just a ball.
In
and
fact,
enough room.
in your back garden or down at the park.
Certainly, yes.
Well, this is absolutely fantastic, isn't it? Oh! The one I like is when it goes to the back of the neck. That's fantastic, is that? I'll tell you what, Charlie, do you think you can give me some tips on it?
We can try.
I'm not very good, especially my baggy pants. Right? Oh!
You're doing not too badly, are you?
Oh, I'm afraid Chelsea's not going to sign me up. Another ball, please. We've got lots of them.
We'll try the knees.
Try the knees. Oh. Charlie, I think I'll leave it to the master if you could do us a little more.
Certainly.
In fact, it's not as easy as it looks, is it? And it's just practice and practice.
It's good fun for the youngsters and so on.
Yeah.
But one thing I'd like to say is that ball players aren't born. It's just all through practice to become ball players.
Well, that's oh,
Sorry.
it's all right. I was worried about it. In fact, if you practice, then you become a great footballer. There's a very good chance of it. Your football improves, you can pass accurately, and of course you will become a great dribbler like Charlie himself. Now, Charlie, dribbling, how does a team use a very good dribbler?
I suppose just to make openings for the rest of his teammates and so on.
Yeah, and does he become a key man?
Well, he becomes one of the key men.
In fact, really, it's teamwork that makes the winning teams.
Oh, undoubtedly.
Yeah. And what's your last tip for the up-and-coming footballers?
Well, I think there's two things they'll need. One is fitness, the other is skill.
Yeah.
And one without that is completely useless.
Well, Charlie Cook, thanks very much for coming along and
My
taking
pleasure.
time for training. And all the best in Chelsea.
Thank you very much.
Well, those were Charlie's tips. So if you want to play football, get your football out after the programme and in the back garden with it. But this isn't the first time I've had some football lessons. It's just over a year ago now that I had a lesson in goalkeeping from Fulham's goalkeeper, Tony Macedo. We met in a park in South London, and Patch came along as my supporter.
Keep rolling. Watch the ball, not the feet. Watch the ball. Narrow the angle. That's better. Keep your hands behind it.
It stings, doesn't it?
No, don't.
Oh!
Up you get. As it goes. Keep coming out. That's better. That's better. Get your body behind it. That's good. That's
How's
good.
that?
Very good. Yes.
There, a bit of style and grace there, Tony.
Several pretty good saves there. I wonder if you noticed when John was learning how to dribble that we had a rather unusual visitor to the Blue Peter studio wandering around in the background. It was in fact a pigeon, and we're feeding him on Joey's birdseed. You can see him there. Well, at the end of this week we have the Easter holidays, and if you live in the country you might be lucky enough to be coming up to London for a visit. If you live in London already, then you might be doing some sightseeing on your very own doorstep. Last week I went off to do some sightseeing myself. I took the Blue Peter cameras to visit one of the most famous buildings in the world. This is the Tower of London, built by William the Conqueror to protect and control the city of London. It has been used for nearly 900 years as a fortress, a palace, a treasure house, a prison, and a place of execution. This river entrance must have struck terror into the hearts of men and women who were landed here in Tudor times. In those days the river was lower and there was a landing stage. There traitors were landed, or those who the sovereign thought might be a threat to the crown. The prisoners were brought from the river through this great gate, which became known as Traitor's Gate, and as the jailers slammed the sinister gate shut behind them, the prisoners knew that they would never leave the tower alive. One person who did live to tell the tale was Queen Elizabeth I, and she passed through the gates twice. Once as a young princess when she was imprisoned for 6 weeks, and once as queen when she insisted on passing through the gates. What was good enough for Elizabeth the Princess is good enough for Elizabeth the Queen, she's reputed to have said. Tower Green looks so beautiful and gentle today, it's almost impossible to believe that it was once the scene of bloody executions. But only the very best people were put to death here. The common criminals, the rabble, the people who were of little account, were put to death over the wall on Tower Hill. But the top people, the people whose execution might have caused riot or revolution, were quietly put to death here on Tower Green. And the death roll is impressive. Queen Anne Boleyn, Margaret, Countess of Salisbury, Queen Catherine Howard, Jane, Viscountess Rochford, Lady Jane Grey. Lady Jane Grey's story is probably the saddest of all. She was 17 years old and she'd harmed no one. But by an accident of relationship, she was declared queen by an ambitious father-in-law. She was brought to the Tower of London in state on July the 10th, 1553, and was presented with the crown jewels. But there was an uprising by Princess Mary, who had a stronger claim to the throne. Mary was successful, and Jane was declared a usurper and sentenced to death. She'd been queen for only 9 days when she was taken to the yeoman warder's house to await execution. She was married, and her husband was imprisoned close by in Beauchamp Tower. To this day, you can see carved on the wall the letters J-A-N-E, probably by the hand of her sad young husband. From her window overlooking the green, Jane saw the guards take her husband to be executed on Tower Hill, and later watched them return with his headless body. At the same time, she could hear the carpenters driving home the nails as her own scaffold was erected. Later that day, the guards came to take her. Proudly, with her ladies in waiting, she walked exactly where I'm walking now, until she came to the scaffold. Here the executioner was waiting for her, and here she had a bandage placed over her eyes. She groped for the block, saying, "Where is it? What am I to do?" And then, as she laid her head on the block, she said, "Lord, into thy hands I commend my spirit." The famous ravens still flutter across Tower Green, just as they did on that morning in June when Jane walked to the scaffold. In those days, they were a common sight in the streets of London and were protected because they were useful as scavengers. There's a superstition going back to Charles II's time that if the ravens leave the Tower, both the Tower and the British Empire will collapse. Today, it is Yeoman Quartermaster Henry John's special responsibility to look after the ravens. He has 6 birds officially on the strength, and he draws 3 shillings per raven per day to keep them fed. The ravens' wings are clipped so that they can roam as they please in the Tower grounds, but will never fly away and place the Empire and the Tower in jeopardy. How often do you have to feed the birds?
Once per day, normally about 8:30 in the morning.
Ooh, and that's what, just a bucket full of meat?
Yes, well, they eat normally about 1.5 pounds per day each.
Smells pretty horrid. I suppose it's got to be rather
Yes,
hard.
well, being carnivorous, you see, they do like it pretty eye, like the vulture and the eagle.
Horrid.
You see.
How long do they live?
Normally about 25 years.
That's a long time.
Yes, but we
try
did
and
have
get
one
near it?
here, you know, for 44 years,
you really?
you know. Yeah, definitely, 44 years.
Yeoman Quartermaster Johns is wearing the everyday undress uniform of navy blue and red. But on special days, like the Queen's birthday, the yeoman warders parade in their splendid uniforms of scarlet and gold. But they always wear the famous beefeater hat. There are 40 yeomen of the guard, and they're recruited from retired warrant officers from the 3 services. Looking after the ravens and acting as guides to tourists is counted as an extra duty for the yeomen. They are the official custodians of the Tower. Because the Crown of England, the orb, the sceptre, and all the priceless regalia used by the sovereign at the coronation is still kept at the Tower. In addition to the yeomen, the Tower is protected by an armed detachment of the Brigade of Guards.
By the left, quick march!
No chances are taken with security at the Tower. Although nowadays they aren't guarding the Queen's prisoners, they are still guarding the crown jewels. Several attempts have been made to steal them in the last 900 years, but so far no one has ever succeeded. These are the keys to the Tower, and they are extremely old. And every night for the past 700 years, they've been used in the ceremony when the chief yeoman warder locks up the Tower for the night and returns the keys under escort to the constable of the Tower. And even during World War II, at the height of the Blitz, the ceremony of the keys was never missed. It starts every night at precisely 9:53.
Keys by the center, quick march!
God preserve Queen Elizabeth.
Amen.
The bugler blows the last post, and the jewels and the crown of St. Edward glint safe and secure in the moonlight. And another day is over in the age-long history of the Tower of London. It'd be pretty spooky at night.
Yeah, I'm very glad you didn't lose your head on the block. Well, it looks as though the Tower of London is very well worth a visit.
Certainly is. It's a great place. As I said earlier, at the end of the week, it's Easter, and I've been having an idea that you can make for an Easter tea party. Of course, when you think of Easter, you always think of eggs, and this is my idea. Well, it looks exactly like an ordinary egg, doesn't it? But inside here, there is in fact solid jelly. And if you're wondering how I did that, I'll show you. The idea is to take an ordinary egg like this and to make a hole in it so that you can blow it. I've got to have a rather large basin to do that, and pierce the egg with a sharp needle like this, or something very sharp, and it's a very tiny hole, as you can see, and if you put your pin quite a long way in, you'll break the egg. And again, the same the other end, and you make this one just a little bit bigger, because this is the end that you're going to get the, there we are, going to get the egg to come out of. Oops, I've broken rather a lot of it, that's a pity. I haven't got another one, unfortunately. That's why you've got to be very careful, but I'll show you how you blow it anyway. Through the very narrow hole, you blow like this. And there it goes. And blow until it's all out, and you can then run some water through the end and just clean the mess out inside. And of course you don't have to waste the egg in the bowl, you can use it for scrambled eggs or cakes or anything like that. And you can do several of these eggs at once. And you then, and don't forget of course it's not supposed to be cracked as mine is, oops, slippery now too. You then cover the end with a bit of sticky tape. That's just to cover the tiny hole at the end that you blew through. And the other end goes in there like that. And in fact I have got a nice clean one here which I think I'm going to use instead. There, one that I have already put some water through. And I've made quite a large hole here, as you can see, and that goes in there, and you then mix up some jelly. And I've got some lovely red jelly in here. You get all the instructions on a packet, and you'll find that one packet will fill about 6 ordinary sized eggs. And this again hasn't got, it should have a bit of sticky tape at the bottom, there we are. Otherwise, of course, it would just run straight through into the egg cup. And you fill this up right the way up to the top, like that. And it doesn't matter if it runs over slightly, that means it's full in fact. You then put this away somewhere to set really nice and firmly, and here's one that has set already. And you then break it very gently, as you would do with an ordinary hard-boiled egg, and you begin to peel it off. And if you can get the skin like that at the same time, just as you do with a hard-boiled egg, it's very much easier to get it off. But you have to be very careful not to pierce the jelly. There it is. And you ease all this. I'm doing it fairly quickly, but it does pay to take a little bit more time on this, and then you won't damage your egg. Like that. Another thing that's a very good idea to do, of course, is to mix your jelly up double strength, and then you'll be quite sure that you won't get wobbly eggs. And there, the last bit off, like that, and there is the jelly egg. And I have got a great plate full of jelly eggs here already, all in different colours. And of course you can get lots of different colours in jelly, and it looks very splendid, like that. Well, it looks much more exciting if you can put your eggs into a nest of jelly. And you mix up a bowl of jelly like this, mash it up with a fork, break it up, put it into a dish, and you can mash it up as much as you like, of course. Spread it out and put your eggs into this. And if you can stand them upright, they look very effective. Like that. And another one. And finally, you can then finish off with a lovely dollop of cream, which you can get out of a forcing bag, like that. And you can make very splendid designs all the way round your eggs. And you can have far more than that, of course. And there you are, a very delicious idea, I think, for an Easter tea. Certainly be very nice for tea on Easter Day indeed. But I have actually heard of some people who had them for breakfast. We said on Thursday that we'd be having a very fast car in the studio today, and here it is.
It's the new Ford V8 racing car, and it certainly is very fast because it's capable of speeds up to 200 miles per hour. One of the most interesting things about this car is its height, because at the top of the cockpit there it is only 35 inches high, which is just about up to my waist. Its length, 13 feet 10 inches, its width, 5 feet 9 inches, and yet it still weighs only 1,400 pounds. That's because it's made of aluminium. The tail is specially designed to produce an airflow which is designed to keep the rear wheels firmly on the ground. And Johnny, if you could come over and give me a hand to remove the tail, we can have a look inside at the engine. Do it back first. Right, that's it.
It's coming off.
Now the engine itself is a V8 3-litre developed for Formula 1 racing. It develops 410 brake horsepower at 9,000 revs per minute, which is pretty fast revving. It was racing yesterday at Brands Hatch, and the BOAC 500 race was doing very well. It was leading on and off for the first hour and a half, and then it had a drive shaft failure. This piece snapped off, and it took no further part in the race. It has fuel injection, no carburetors, and a 5 forward speed gearbox, enabling it to do 75 miles per hour in first gear. Another interesting thing, these enormous rear tyres. If I put my boot on this tyre, you can see in relation to my shoe how wide they are. They're 14 inches wide, which is very wide indeed. The wheels are very light. They're made of magnesium, and each wheel costs over £90, which is a fair old price to pay. Now, you may have noticed that sitting in the cockpit we've got a driver. It's the gentleman who drove this car in the BOAC 500 yesterday. It's international racing driver Bruce McLaren. Hello, Bruce.
Hello, Peter.
Well, yesterday, of course, was a very sad day for Blue Peter and for everyone interested in motor racing, because as you've probably heard, yesterday Jim Clark, racing driver Jim Clark, was killed in Germany. I believe he was a friend of yours, Bruce.
Yeah, he was a good friend of mine, Peter, and I think, I'm very sad about it, and everyone involved in motorsport all around the world will be very sad.
He was a very fine driver, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think one of the greatest, perhaps the greatest yet.
It seems likely his car failed him rather than he failed the car.
Well, it would seem that way.
And I believe he was going to drive this car, wasn't he?
Yes, he and Graham Hill were going to drive a sister car to this. There were 2 cars entered, but last-minute arrangements were such that they went to the race at Hockenheim instead.
What did he think of this car?
Well, I imagine that, like me, he felt it had great potential. This Grand Prix engine that we have in the back here is a real beauty, and it'll make the car go. It'll be, I think, a real race-winning car.
How was it going before it broke down yesterday?
Well, very well, really. It was leading for quite a while, and perhaps we could see some film.
Yes, good idea. Bruce was off to a great start, tucked in with the 2 Porsches. The car was going splendidly and was soon in the lead. For an hour and a half, Bruce fought to keep the lead, and when he handed over to Mike Spence, he was 6 seconds up. But it was a few minutes afterwards that the shaft broke and the Ford V8 was out of the race. Well, bad luck, Bruce, and let's hope that it doesn't happen again in the same way. And thanks very much for coming to the studio.
Thank you, Peter.
Good luck in the future.
Well, we'll be back again on Thursday with Leslie Crowther, and I bet you can't guess what he's doing.
And I'll be looking through the biggest telescope in Europe.
So we'll see you on Thursday, and don't forget to send in a name for our puppy.
Oh, no. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.